Hello to the curious and welcome to the 5th video in this series. Now in this one we'll be looking at lessons primarily. We want to make lessons functional. We want to be able to click through our lessons and actually open up a video and view that lesson like that. We also want to have the URL parameters updated so that once you go from lesson to lesson to lesson, it updates in the URL. We know what ID and what lesson name we're on, so we can copy and paste that, send that to someone else, or just open up in another tab and watch it later, and it's going to take us to the exact same lesson that we want to watch in the order, selected, video open, ready to go. So that is some stuff we're working on. We're also going to be adding thumbnails and images to courses. We're going to be tidying up the course cards. So a lot of cool stuff in this video. So make sure to like and subscribe. Join us on Discord. We've had a lot of people join us recently in the last few videos. It's been awesome to get to know you, chat to you, talk about projects you're working on, give some advice, showcase work, and just generally just chit chat. It's been pretty cool. So yeah, the link for that is in the description. If you're on Twitter or X, you can follow me on there as well. I post regularly and put updates about what we're working on at Curious Byte, so you get to know what's going on a little bit earlier. So join me on there or Discord or wherever. But mostly, let's get coding. So in this video, this is what we'll be building. You can see we've overhauled the courses pages. They've now got thumbnails or pictures. So the advanced JavaScript has its own image. There's a scale animation when you hover over each one. They've also had the text resized and slightly styled, and the box has been made a bit smaller. So if we click on a course, we can see that if there are no videos like before, we get this screen. But if we go onto a course that does have videos and we click it, we have several lessons in the course, and we have them in a list or a table that you can scroll, and you can see that the first one is automatically highlighted, and you can see the URL parameters here. It says courses and then a 2, and then if we click the next one, it'll completely change the URL parameters, and this will become highlighted and the video will change. So it shows the ID in the URL parameters, then it shows the lesson name, and then gives the actual title of the lesson. So if we go through and cycle through, the URL parameters change as well, and the video changes as well. And we can go through and we can see the video also changes with this, and it remembers. So if you were to refresh this, the video you were last on persists. You can also grab the link here and the URL parameters, open up a new one, paste it in, and it will take you right back to it. We can watch the video.
And this is Roshan.
So I've currently got one of Mosh's videos up because he's got a great JavaScript series, and I thought if we're going to put videos on here, that'll be a good one to add. But yeah, the point is you can use YouTube videos and embed them in here, and you can do that with any other type of video platform as well, and it should work just the same. It's essentially a video URL. This is the lessons page now. We're no longer going to its own page. So before in the last video, we had it so that they had their own page. I didn't think that worked quite well, and I think this works a lot better. This can now scale. You can add as many videos as you want. It will stay in this size. But for the most part, this is what we're going to be building in this episode. So let's get to coding. So we're back. So this is what it looks like currently where we last left off. So if we go in here, this is what we're working with. We've still got the same lessons that we've added, but we need to style these now. The video doesn't do anything. If we go to the courses pages, there's no animations. They're just very simple cards. You go to here, that still shows, which is fine, but we'll need to sort all of this out. And if we click anything, we go to the individual page, which we don't want. So let's start sorting this all out. If we go to the courses page, we can see that we've got these 3 courses here right now. Now, if you remember earlier, I showed you that they've all got their own images. So let's add that first. Let's go and add that content type and add the images and add that to the front end. The first thing we want to do is go to the next config and actually update the settings there. So if we open up VS Code, then go to next config here. So just below here, we'll add another section for images, and we'll make sure that we can have access to localhost as a domain. So for example, if we want to access images from localhost leet or 1337, which would be the Strapi domain. Speaking of Strapi, let's go add the thumbnail content type. So if we go to courses and we'll add another collection type, we'll go to media and we'll type in thumbnail. We'll type in thumbnail. Type in single media. Click finish. Save that. So now it's restarting the Strapi server. Then if we go to lessons and make sure we've got title, video URL, duration, description, and user added, we should be good. I think that's everything we need to add in Strapi's content type builder. You can go back to here, and for this to work, we'll open up the console. So what we want to do now is actually get the thumbnail to log in the console log. So what we want to do is console log the thumbnail. So if we go to VS Code, we go to app hooks and use fetch course data. We currently see that we're using the populate command, which is fine, but we're not just looking for lessons now. We're actually looking for lessons and thumbnail, and we might even look for more. So what we do is we just stop being specific and saying we just want lessons as to populate deeper into the object. And we'll just add an asterisk and we'll say we're looking for all of it. Close this terminal down as well. Then we'll just do a quick bit of housekeeping. We'll go to app page.tsx. We can remove typography as we're not using that. Go to layout, get rid of this use effect, this use theme here, and just delete this use theme. And that should be all tidied up now. And then we'll go into the courses page and then remove typography as we're not needing that here anymore. One thing I've been meaning to do for a while is to sort out the types on this project. So we've kind of had just kind of hanging around in course grid here, which is not ideal. So we can probably just take all this, take it out from here, and go into courses, add our type here. In fact, let's create a new folder, call it types, a course.types. And in here, we'll add our types, two of which we brought over. But you can see here, we've got course data type and we've got lesson data type, which essentially takes in the lesson type, which is everything that we'll need for the lesson, title, description, duration. And then up here, very importantly, we've got our thumbnail, which is where we're going to get the image from. And I've only added the very basics for now. We can add to this later, but we just want the URL and we just want to get the string for the URL right now. Go to course data type, and we just make sure we add that import. That is imported. Rid of that. Yep, I think that's everything. So that's all typed correctly now. So we've got these core types that we're going to need for our courses and lessons. And let's go add our images now. So if we go to Strapi, and if we go to Content Manager, we go to Advanced JavaScript, you can see that I've currently added a thumbnail. So there's an image here, but if I was to remove this and then go ahead and add it again, you can go to add more assets here, and then you get the option to add an image. But I've already added it, but you can add your own here. And once you do, you simply click it, add any alternate text. So you can put JS icon, JS course icon, JS course illustration. I know that's a terrible one. Add a caption. So it's all very friendly. Finish. And then obviously make sure you select it. Check it in the top corner. Click finish and add it back. And save. I've also gone ahead and added the lessons to the courses. So if you want to add a course, all you simply do is go into lessons here, and we'll add one for, we could add one for CSS beginner. Go to lessons here, create a new entry. We'll call it what is CSS. We'll just add a random video for now, looking into the basics of CSS. We'll say it's 3 minutes, say 5 minutes long, and then we'll add a user. Save, publish, go to courses, go to CSS beginner. We've already added our thumbnail here, and we'll go add a lesson. Go what is CSS. Now there's an interesting way you can organize these. So at the start of each, if you've got multiple courses, you can add maybe some kind of like slug. So you could say, if this is CSS beginner course, you could say add a CSS slug like this. You could say 01, and then you could put what is CSS. And then because you can just search for that, you can just type in CSS01, you'll know which course it is. And that's one way, because you're going to get all these names here at the same time. But I've just added it like this for now, because I've only got probably one course that I'm going to populate. And then just add the user and then save. So if we go to Curious Courses, we go to CSS Beginner, we should see our course here. What is CSS? We'll go back to courses here. And we still want the thumbnails to show. So let's go ahead and add them now. So for now, we just want to console log them. We're on course grid, close these other tabs down. So under here, I'm going to add our thumbnail URL. So under here, what I'm going to do is just map over course data. As we map over this, I just want to console log thumbnail URL. Make sure we've got rid of all our other console logs as well. Okay, we have. So let's go have a look. Make sure this is closed correctly. Add one more here. So if we refresh, we can now see that we get our URLs. So I'm fairly happy with that. We're getting the, I guess the relative URL, because we're not getting the local host in here. So if I was to open that up, go to the page, it does nothing. But if I put in at the start, HTTP localhost 1337 /uploads, we then get our image. So that's what we need to do in the code. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the course card into this map here. So you can see that the thumbnail URL is still the same. I'll remove the console log because we know it works. I've got the course data mapping still. We're connecting it to our type, course data type. We're using the ID number. There we go. So now we've moved this into the map. We've got the thumbnail still here. We've got the course data being mapped over, and we've got the courses available now. We're using the course card within to still do everything that we need to do. We're using the course ID here. And then we've got the thumbnail here. So we've created a new prop for course card, which we haven't created yet. You can see course card is complaining about, well, it's complaining we're not using key. We don't actually need key right now. Just go in here and remove this. Do not want key as a prop. And what we'll do here is we'll just remove it. We don't actually need that. So we can remove that safely without fear, and it should still work fine. So what we do actually want, if we stay on course card, we need to make sure we add the thumbnail, add a string. And just between here, we'll add a next image component, which obviously does a whole lot of stuff, which will be better than just using a normal image component. It'll be a lot more optimized. We'll get different resolutions from it. So we'll add, just make sure we're importing it. Get rid of this button. It's complaining about thumbnail. We just need to make sure we're destructuring here at the top in this props object. Okay, go back to course grid and just uncomment this. So what this is doing is it's checking the thumb URL to see if it actually exists. And then if it does exist, it's going to use it, which is the URL that we wanted. And then it's, if not, if it doesn't come back as anything, it's just going to be an empty string, which is fine. And you can see here that in the image component, we've got some styling. So we're using the card image class name. And then in the source, we're checking to see if the thumbnail actually exists, the prop. And if it is, we've got a string literal with process env. So we're going to the env file and we're grabbing next public Strapi images domain. And we just need to make sure that that is created. And we do have that created. So that is going to be localhost leet or 1337, which is our Strapi domain. And this is something that we can change in our deployment. So if we want to point it to, for example, Cloudinary or some other CDN service for our images or media, we can do. So this is a nice little thing we've got here to do that with. And after that, we're going to append thumbnail, which has the / in the URL, so you can put that after, and it should give us our URL. Let's just make sure we add the styling here. Go to card image and add that styling. So this card image is essentially just pushing up the image slightly over, so it has this overlap effect. And there we go, you can see it now. So you can see it's slightly overlapping over the card at the top, but it shows all the images just fine. It's the right size, it's what we want. But you notice if we hover over them, it's not very interesting. There's no animation, the heights are a little different. So we're just going to add a little bit more styling to make sure that these are all uniformed. And we have a bit of a hover animation that scales and grows as you hover over it. So just here in the course card, we want to add a minimum height of 15 rem. And then we want to use a transition. We want to transition all the properties, and we'll do ease in and out. And then on hover, this is where we're going to do our scale animation. We'll add our transition, which is basically the same, out as well. And transform scale to 1.02. And we'll just make sure we set the, there we go. Go take a look. Now you can see we've got our nice scale animation. However, do want to uniform the height of this, so let's do that now. So we could increase the height, but I actually don't want it that much bigger than this. So what we're going to do is actually reduce the font size here of this text. I'm going to go to course card, go to the bottom here, and just change this to small. So that now has changed the text size to small, and now they're all aligned and of a similar size, which is what we want. We also want the focus to be on this title text here. The actual writing here isn't as important. People just want to know, I'd imagine, just what the course is and that. So I'm fairly happy with these course cards. I think that should be enough. We've got the thumbnails working now, and that's all tied in. We can click this. Now we're getting this error because I imagine, because we're using the populate command here, where is it? Because we're using this, probably getting more data now. So probably getting a shape of data which doesn't work somewhere. Let's go take a look. So in the course header here, you can see that that has slightly changed. We should have been using attributes, but for some reason that wasn't. Somehow that was working. But yeah, this needed to have attributes before it, because obviously that is the the shape of the object that comes back from Strapi traditionally. So make sure you go into the course ID page and then go to your course header. And then for title, description, user, make sure you add attributes. And then as optional, then do some optional checking here. Right. So well, that brings us nicely onto this page because we wanted to be here anyway. We're going to do something slightly different. So if we have a look at the page now, we can see that we've got the course listing page, and then you can see that we've got a player. And they're two very distinct components if you think about it. This really should be its own component, and this should be its own component separated with its own logic, and they should be contained within the course ID page where you can wrap them in logic if you need to pass anything between them, for example. So that's the idea. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll break these down into two separate components, the course list and the course page. So let's do that now. Go into components, create a new component. We'll go course list, add an index.ts file, and we'll add course list.module.sas file as well. Make sure to export that. We'll just create a very simple component here. Make sure we get some types. Course list props. lessons for now. Lesson data type, and we'll make sure that we tie these two together. Right, so that is our course list page. Add last name. We'll do sas dot then we'll just import our Sass modules from the course list Sass file. So that's all 3 files connected, and we can copy and paste this, and we'll create a new file, course player, which will be our video player. Apparently I can't spell player. And then we'll create all 3 files. Do the same here, export. Okay, I think that is set up. Go here, display block. Okay, and then let's go to this page here, and we'll add these files. So just here, we'll add course list, import that, and I would imagine this is the player here. So we'll do course player. And let's just have a look to see what props they're going to need. So it's using lessons. So luckily we've added that already. So we add that there. And then lesson amount. So we'll probably, what is that type? I think that's a number. Right, so we can add that type now. So go to course list, go to lesson amount, type in lesson amount. And then down here, lesson. Oh, we haven't imported this. Got that now. So just to double check. So yes, lessons we've got there. Is there any other types we need? This one might be very simple. It's just that. Okay, so I think then what we can do is just quickly go see what that looks like. You can see we've got course list here and course player. We've added those components, and now we're just going to simply take all of this, put it into course list, and take this and put it into course player, and then delete the old code. And then you won't see a difference after that. So let's grab this, paper to paper, go into course player. Right, so yeah, so that's not going to exist on that lesson type. So we actually need to change this to lesson type. And then got an array, a circle icon. Make sure grab the icon button as well. And just here, make sure we add the class name for course player, which we've already set up. Actually, then we'll just take all this styling and so all this styling that was in the other player, we can actually take this and put it in the style sheet now. So I can get rid of this. Go to course player now, width 100%. Justify content center, line item center. Min height 30 rem, max height 30 rem. Let's do height then. Let's do height 30 rem. Okay, so that is the course player. So let's go take a look. There you go. You can see that there's no difference now. We've got that component pretty much replaced like for like, but we've now got it set up as its own component with its own props. And it's a lot neater, I would say. Get rid of the port. Okay, let's do the same for course list. So let's go to page, go up here, grab nav, delete that, go to course list, and we can simply replace that. So we import. All right, I think we've got the same issue here as well. So lesson type, an array, find course ID. Okay, so I guess that's one thing we're going to need to add as well. We type number. So let's just go back to page and see where course ID is coming from. That and that. We're grabbing that all from the URL. But in actuality, we can just absolutely take this, go to course list, go here, and this is our custom hook. We can import that. We need to import this slow motion video icon. We now have that imported. I think that is everything. Oh, right, I may have taken a little too much. Okay, we do need to keep that there for the course header. We can then get rid of all this stuff here, and you can start to see immediately how much tidier this is now. Look at that. Look how much smaller that is. Yeah, that's nice. So we've got these separate sections in their own components. That's fine to have a box component because it's basically a layout component anyway. So now you can see the course list component looks exactly the same, but it's separated. And same goes for the course player component, which is a really important step to tidying up the course page. So what I want to do here is I want to start to actually add the video URL to this, because we look here, we currently don't get anything. If we click one of these videos or one of these lessons, it takes us to its individual page, and then it shows us the video, but we don't actually want that. So we want to actually get the video URL to go here. So first things first, I want to disable us going to these pages and then add the video URL here. There's course list, and just comment this out. And we're saying this is an anchor tag, but pretty much. I'm just going to get rid of this because we know it's an anchor tag. We don't need to say that it is. Okay, and then we want to add the video URL. So to pass the video URL to this, we're going to need a prop to do that. We'll get lesson video URL as a string. Make sure we destructure it. And then down here, we want to essentially replace this icon button and play circle button, this here, with the iframe that we're currently using on the lesson page. It's going to take the prop lesson video URL. It's not going to show anything because we haven't passed it yet. So let's go ahead and pass that now. And just make sure you set the width to 100% as well. Very important that you set the width to 100%. So lesson video URL, we'll go to page here and open that up. And for now, we'll just put an empty string. Go back to course player. That looks fine. Okay. So now that we've got this set as an empty string, we've got the setting to pass the video URL to this. So we want to get the lesson video URL from the lesson information, but the page component here in the course ID is not going to know that, nor is the course player component. The only place that is going to know that is in the course list component. So only within here where the actual event is happening, where the user is clicking an item in the list, is the user going to select a lesson to watch, therefore getting access to the actual video URL, which we can then set in the URL parameters, which essentially means we add it. So at the very top, the URL, so it'll be like localhost 3000, course ID, blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to put lesson ID, and then the lesson ID. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. And then we're also going to put the lesson name as well. And from that, we're going to be able to pull that out on this page here and have access to that information and then use it here. So we can then pass it to course player in this lesson video URL. So I know that sounds like quite a long process to think about, but once we do it, it'll become very clear. So we'll go to the course list here and we'll start changing the URL parameters based off what the user or which lesson the user clicks. And this is a really good technique that you use on more advanced UI and front end. So the first thing we want to do is we've got this list item button here, and we used to have the href where we go to the page. This is where all the action's happening. So what we need to do is add an on-click handler here instead of this href. So we can actually add that now. So on-click, and we're going to have a handler here called handle lesson click, and we're going to take in a parameter of the lesson of which we're mapping over here, and then we're going to grab the ID. So let's create this handler event now. So here we go. So I'll explain what this is doing, and it's quite simple really. We're getting the lesson name. So within our lessons here, we're using the parameter that we're going to pass in, and then we're just going to bring that down -1. And then we're going to go for the attributes and title. So this is going to go essentially in the URL. So we want the ID and the lesson name, and that's essentially this. We want to format the lesson name because if we don't, it's going to have those like percentage 20 symbols which annotate a space, which is not what we want. We essentially, for example, if we've got two words, so we'll call if, for example, we had a space, it would look like this. And instead we just want it like that. So that's how we'll get it to show with this regex. And then what we're going to do is we're going to build a new URL, and we're going to take in the course ID, which is here. And then we're going to be setting the lesson ID, which we're passing as a parameter for this click handler, and then the lesson name, which we have created and tidied up with regex in these two const here. And then we're just building it here in the window object. So we do have some more here, which I'll explain later on, that are very important to what we're doing. So this essentially, every time you click it, it reloads the page. So you make sure you go and grab the new video. So you make sure that it goes and checks to see that the new video URL is here, and that this just then sets the lesson ID here in state. Now we haven't added the state yet, so we'll go and do that now. So just above here, we'll add some new state, and we're selecting lesson ID. We can uncomment this now, and we're taking in the parameter here. So then we now have an understanding of which ID from the lesson is actually selected, which is going to be super important. Then use that later. Then ultimately, we want to check that this is done on page reload. So if, for example, you copy and paste the link and you send it to another page, we want to know which is the selected ID. So to do that, we're going to need a use effect to run at the very start of this component being loaded in. Actually, probably delete these now, these three up here. Just under here, we'll add them. And what this is doing is it's actually checking the URL. So now for this check to work, we need to use a new hook called use search params. And this is from Next. Essentially what that does is it checks the router, and it checks the essentially checks where you are on the route, grabs that URL and searches for the parameters. And then we can get a hold of those parameters and we can search for the specific one that we want. So we're saying lesson param ID equals search params, which is this. And we want to get the lesson ID, which is super important. And then we're using that here in the use effect to check every time this component is loaded in. Right, so we've got a lot there right now to handle URL parameters and to set the lesson ID in the URL parameters. Let's see if that works. So if I refresh this and I click functions, amazing. So we can see that we've clicked the fourth video here, and we're getting lesson ID equals 4, lesson name equals functions, which is correct. So if we click scope, it now says scope, lesson 5, arrays, lesson 6, name arrays, and then loops. It goes on. Amazing. That's working now. We have the URL parameters going. We probably just want to tidy up this list component a little more. I do want to add the numbers in here to make it a little bit clearer. So just down here, where it says lesson attributes title, we just want to use the ID, which we're going to get from up here. And then we can set this lesson to lesson type instead of any. So we've got the ID and lesson type here. And then we're going to grab the ID number. Now the ID is going to be like a typical array number, which is going to be like 0, starting at 0. So we're going to add a +1 to make sure that it starts at the relevant ID for the lesson. Go to here and you can see, the number 1, introduction to JavaScript, 2 variables, 3 conditionals, 4 functions, and so on. Click here, conditionals, and it's still all working. Brilliant. So now you can see there is a slight issue on the list here. We've got it so that it's kind of extending the list beyond the player here, which is not what we want. We want it to sit at about this line here, and then we're able to scroll through it. If we go to course list up here, and then we'll add a class name, sas.courseList, and just here, go into here, go overflow auto. And we'll also add a class name here called lesson navigation. Set that to a minimum width of 25 rem, just so we make sure it fits the space. Then what I also want to do is add a maximum height to the course list of 30 rem, and then just make sure we remove all the other padding. And we do have to override material UI here. That's why we're adding an important. And finally, we're going to add some styling for the list item. So we want to make sure it's display flex, align center, and has a bit of spacing from the right of about 0.25. Again, we're overriding MUI here. There's list item button. I can add the style there and then delete that. So if we go take a look now, we can see it's all way more uniformed. We now have a scroll bar, and we can go through our lessons like that. Still works the same, and then our course player is still here. We do want to change some of the styling on this scroll bar because it's not quite right. So just within this list component here, I know we've added our class name. Just going to add some scroll bar styling, but I want it to be using the theme. I'm just going to pop this up here, and we'll pull in from the theme. We'll bring that in from Material UI. Brilliant. And you can see that that is now styled with the primary color. If I swap this, it should stay the same. Now, speaking of theming, we also want to add some selected styling. So if we were to click a lesson, we actually want it to remember which one we've selected and to store that information and have it themed as well to our primary color. So to do that, we need to actually find our list item button here, and then just add this style here. And this is connected to the selected lesson ID. Now, remember earlier I said that this is super important. This is another reason why. So we need to make sure that we have that stored. Get rid of that href. And yeah, we're setting it to primary main. So if selected lesson ID equals lesson ID, then it highlights it. It sets the background color here to our primary main. And if not, then it's just going to stay transparent. Let's go take a look. So we're on scope. The number 5, refresh, still there. Conditionals, it knows which one we're selecting. Functions, refresh. Brilliant, that's working excellent. It didn't work initially though because we just changed it. So, but if we refresh now, that should work. Okay, yeah, so I'm happy with that. I've noticed we've not actually got our course header here. We do actually need to get that back up and running. So I suspect these attribute titles we added, I just looked at the way this was laid out. It seems the only one that was needed was the user one. The others weren't actually needed. So once that's sorted, that actually solved our original error. The attributes wasn't needed in this data here, which is fine. Because we're actually, this isn't courses, which would need attributes. This is course, so it's already broken down. You're already getting the access to all this information. Cool, we now have our course header back. Let's sort out the course player. But to do that, we need to actually get the information ready to send it in the course page. If we go to this course page here, so just under here, we need to add some state. So this is where we're going to store the selected lesson ID, similar to how we've got it in the course list page. And we want it to return a number. We set the default to 1. So this means if, for example, you go onto a course page for the first time, the very first list item is always going to be selected, which is what we want. The first lesson is always selected. That's why the 1's there. We then want to go into the search parameters and go basically get the search parameters that we want, which is lesson ID. Store it in lesson ID. So we store it in the lesson param ID constant as we're looking for lesson ID. And very importantly, we're then going to get our video lesson URL. And to do that, we're going to look in lessons, and then we're going to check it against the selected lesson ID. And we're going to grab the video URL for it. And if we can't, then we're just going to return an empty string. So we can take this lesson video URL, and we can now, where we had these empty strings, put it in there. But just taking it one step further, when we refresh onto a page, we need to check to see if the URL lines up and it's all correct. So again, we need to do a use effect. So you can see here, we're setting the state by doing a check to see if the lesson parameter ID in the search parameters hook here is the one that we're looking for. And then if it is, we -1 to basically correct it to the number that we do want, because it's probably going to be usually is 1 out of whack. And then otherwise return 1, which then is the first in the lessons. And then we just obviously need to make sure that we're checking that in the dependencies of the use effect. If this changes, then this updates. So course player is pretty good. Right, let's go take a look at that. If we go to our course list page now, we can immediately see that we've got a video. And if we go to, if we click play, obviously that works. What is JavaScript? Brilliant. And if we click the next one, doesn't change straight away. But if we refresh the page, we can see the let verse var. This is indeed the correct video for the second lesson. Go to 3, doesn't change immediately. But if we refresh it, it then shows us the correct video, which is exactly the intention of all that logic we wrote to check the parameters here to get the correct lesson ID, which is this here, which is super important. And it just goes to show you the importance of using URL parameters in front end. And you don't always need to use global stores. You don't always need to use Redux or things like that. And this, as a UI and front end trend, is actually picking up more and more. And it's a pretty advanced technique, and it's something that you'll use in front end later on if you aren't already in your day-to-day work. So definitely a good one to learn. Now the problem is that we're clicking these videos, but we're not actually seeing the video pop up straight away. If you remember that line that we commented out earlier in the course list page, in the handle lesson click, we had the window location reload. So we'll uncomment that. And what that's going to do is every time we click it, it's going to reload it. And it means that if I click the second lesson, I get the correct video because it's reloading it for me. Then we go to functions. We now get our functions. If we click arrays, we now get our arrays video. So we're now getting the correct videos based off what we click in the list. These are two completely separate components, but they're communicating through the URL search parameters here. And obviously the brilliant thing about this is you then, if you say you want someone to watch the video, and you say, oh, I've just watched this video, this lesson on this course, go check it out, open up in a new window, and it takes them right to it. But what happens if they go to a course and they want to go to a video they've never been to before? Well, if they go to it, the very first list item is going to be selected. And you go to here, it's going to, well, the CSS one, that would be the case. So that's working quite well as intended. Now, because we're using course ID in the courses page, we don't actually need to get it again. We can actually just pass it. So we'll put it as a prop here, and then here, course ID, and then we can delete that, go here, and then just pass it in. And that just tidies up the code a little bit and avoids repetition. So everything we have now is working in sync with 3 components. We have the course ID page, we have the course list component, and we have the course player component. And One thing we do need to check is how this works responsively. So right now, this just switches and goes on top, which is great. Yeah, so that works fine. So there we go. We have conquered lessons. Lessons are now functional. We click them, we see a video now. We go through the list. The relevant video for that lesson shows up. We also change the URL parameters when we click a video, so we can copy and paste where we are on that course into a new browser or send that to someone else. We can send a particular video to someone else and it will remember where in the list we are. We've got animations, we've got styles added. It's looking pretty good. We've now also got thumbnails for our course cards, and the course cards are animated. So there's quite a bit you've covered here, including the concept of URL parameters, which is a really handy one to learn if you're looking to progress as a front-end developer. Certainly one you'll probably be asked to do if you haven't already. But a lot of great concepts, and yeah, we've still got more to go. We've still got more to cover, still more to learn, still more to show. The next episode, or the next video, is going to look at user progression. So how we actually save user progression information, put it in the profile, and just make sure that as we progress through a course, it is known that we're progressing through a course, and we can associate a user with the courses and the lessons. So all of that is coming up in the next lesson, which is a big part of an e-learning platform. If that sounds interesting, make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification to know when the next videos are coming. Check us out on Discord. So we've got a little community going. We've had quite a few people join over the last few videos. It's been great to get to know you. It's been a lot of fun. Link for that is in the description. If you're on X or Twitter, check me out on the Hashton. I post regularly, post updates about what I'm working on for Curious Byte, so you get to know what's happening in advance, what it's going to look like, and what videos are on the horizon. But until the next video, I'll see you then.